Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at chapter 5, section 2, which is also known as chapter 13, okay? We're going to be taking a look at the creature and his connection with the family. He has noticed that the family is extremely sad, but he can't pinpoint on why, especially because he believes that they live a life of luxury compared to what he has, right? Or more like what he lacks. So let's go ahead and read together and figure out what's going to happen with the creature and what happens with the family that he encounters. I now hasten to the more moving part of my story. I shall relate events that impressed me with feelings which, from what I had been, have made me what I am. Spring advanced rapidly. The weather became fine and the skies cloudless. It surprised me that what before was desert and gloomy should now bloom with most beautiful flowers and verdure. My senses were gratified and refreshed by 1,000 scents of delight and 1,000 sights of beauty. So it's springtime. It was one of these days when my cottagers periodically rested from labor. The old man played on his guitar and the children listened to him. I observed that the countenance of Felix was melancholy beyond expression. He sighed frequently, and once his father paused in his music, and I conjectured by his manner that he inquired the cause of his son's sorrow. Felix replied in a cheerful accent, and the old man was recommencing his music, when someone tapped at the door. It was a lady on horseback, accompanied by a countryman as a guide. The lady was dressed in a dark suit and covered with a thick black veil. Agatha asked a question, to which the stranger only replied by pronouncing in a sweet accent the name of Felix. Her voice was musical, but unlike that of either of my friends. On hearing this word, Felix came up hastily to the lady, who, when she saw him, threw up her veil, and I beheld a countenance of angelic beauty and expression, her hair of shining raven black and curiously braided. Her eyes were dark but gentle, although animated, her features of irregular proportion, and her complexion wondrously fair, each cheek tinged with a lovely pink. Felix seemed ravished with delight. One second. One second, guys. What's going on? Monday. No, it's all been passed out. I don't know if you wanna. I can send a message to some of the students. All right. Okay, bye. Sorry. Okay, where was I? Felix seemed ravished with delight when he saw her. Every trait of sorrow vanished from his face, and instantly expressed a degree of ecstatic joy, of which I could hardly have believed it capable. His eyes sparkled as his cheek flushed with pleasure, and at that moment I thought him as beautiful as a stranger. She appeared affected by different feelings. Wiping a few tears from her lovely eyes, she held out her hand to Felix, who kissed it rapturously, and called her, as well as I could distinguish, his sweet Arabian. So I'm guessing she's Arabian, right? And there seems to be some sort of relationship between the two of them. She did not appear to understand him, but smiled. He assisted her to dismount, and dismissing her guide, conducted her into the cottage. Some conversation took place between him and his father, and the younger stranger knelt at the old man's feet, and would have kissed his hand, but he raised her and embraced her affectionately. So obviously there's some connection between her and the family, and we're gonna find out what it is, because it could be a reason why they were sad. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I soon perceived that although the stranger uttered articulate sounds and appeared to have a language of her own, she was neither understood by nor herself understood the cottagers. They made many signs which I did not comprehend, but I saw that her presence diffused gladness through the cottage, dispelling the sorrows as the sun dissipates the morning mist. Felix seemed peculiarly happy, and with smiles of delight welcomed his Arabian. Agatha, the ever gentle Agatha, kissed the hands of the lovely stranger, and pointing to her brother, made signs which appeared to me to mean that he had been sorrowful until she came. Some hours passed thus, while they by their countenances expressed joy, the cause of which I did not comprehend. Presently I found, by the frequent recurrence of one sound which the stranger repeated after them, that she was endeavoring to learn their language, and the idea instantly occurred to me that I should make use of the same instructions to the same end. The stranger learned about 20 words of the first lesson. Most of them, indeed, were those which I had before understood, but I profited by the others. So, light bulb, right, goes off, and the creature realizes, oh, they're going to teach her the language? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn the language because they're going to teach it to her. As night came on, Agatha and the Arabian retired early. When they separated, Felix kissed the hand of the stranger and said, "Good night, sweet Safie." He sat up much longer, conversing with his father, and by the frequent repetition of her name, I conjectured that their lovely guest was the subject of their conversation. I ardently desired to understand them, and bent every faculty towards their purpose, but found it utterly impossible. The next morning Felix went out to his work, and after the usual occupations of Agatha were finished, the Arabian sat at the feet of the old man, and taking his guitar, played some airs so entrancingly beautiful that they at once drew tears of sorrow and delight from my eyes. She sang, and her voice flowed in a rich cadence, swelling or dying away, like a nightingale of the woods. When she had finished, she gave the guitar to Agatha, who at first declined it. She played a simple air, and her voice accompanied in sweet accents, but unlike the wondrous strain of the stranger. The old man appeared enraptured, and said some words, which Agatha endeavored to explain to Safie, and by which he appeared to wish to express that she bestowed on him the greatest delight by her music. The days now passed as peaceably as before, with the sole alteration that joy had taken the place of sadness in the countenances of my friends. Safie was always gay and happy. She and I improved rapidly in the knowledge of language, so that in 2 months I began to comprehend most of the words uttered by my protectors. So 2 months passed, and he's learned quite a bit of language. In the meanwhile, also the black ground was covered with herbage, and the green banks interspersed with innumerable flowers, sweet to the scent of the eye, stars of pale radiance among the moonlight woods. The sun became warmer, the nights clear and balmy, and my nocturnal rambles were an extreme pleasure to me, although they were considerably shortened by the late setting and early rising of the sun. For I never ventured abroad during daylight, fearful of meeting with the same treatment I had formerly endured in the first village which I entered. So he's still very traumatized about what happened to him uh, when he entered the village, when they chased him off. So um, obviously he's going to steer clear from humans. My days were spent in close attention that I might more speedily master the language, and I may boast that I improved more rapidly than the Arabian, who understood very little and conversed in broken accents, while I comprehended and could imitate almost every word that was spoken. While I improved in speech, I also learned the science of letters, as it was taught to the stranger, and this opened before me a wide field for wonder and delight. So along with learning to speak, he is learning pretty much how to write, how to read. Um, Probably more read than write, but he's learning this because they're teaching Safie. The book from which Felix instructed Safie was Volney's Ruins of Empires. I should not have understood the purport of this book had not Felix, in reading it, given very minute explanations. He had chosen this work, he said, because the declamatory style was framed in imitation of the Eastern authors. Through this work I obtained a cursory knowledge of history and a view of several empires at present existing in the world. It gave me an insight into the manners, governments, and religions of the different nations of the earth. I heard of the slothful Asiatics, of the stupendous genius and mental activity of the Grecians, of the wars and wonderful virtue of the early Romans, of their subsequent degeneration and the decline of the mighty empire, of chivalry, Christianity, and kings. I heard of the discovery of the American hemisphere, and wept with Safie over the hapless fate of the original inhabitants. So he's learning a lot of history, okay? But with this, he's going to start making connections about mankind. Okay. These wonderful narrations inspired me with a strange feelings. Was man indeed at once so powerful, so virtuous and magnificent, yet so vicious and base? He appeared at one time a mere scion of evil principle, and at another as all that can be conceived of noble and godlike. Keyword godlike, okay, because who's being godlike in this story, all right? Um, he's making note of man's nature, you know. Sometimes we're good, sometimes we're bad, but he can't tell why there's a change or why there's some good and there's some bad. To be a great and virtuous man appeared the highest honor that can befall a sensitive being. To be a base and vicious, as many on record have been, appeared the lowest degradation, a condition more abject than that of the blind mole or harmless worm. For a long time I could not conceive how one man could go forth to murder his fellow, or even why there were laws and governments, but when I heard details of vice and bloodshed, my wonder ceased, and I turned away with disgust and loathing. Every conversation of cottagers, let's go back to that. I turned away with disgust and loathing when it talked about bloodshed, right? Well, remember when he first meets Victor Frankenstein on the mountain, he says, I was benevolent, but misery made me a fiend. Um, you know, he was good. He was caring. It wasn't like he was automatically attracted to evil, attracted to murder, attracted to death. Something happened to him to um, to force him, I guess you could say, to push him over that edge, okay? Not that it's an excuse for what he does, but just so you understand why, I guess. Every conversation in the cottagers now opened new wonders to me. While I listened to the instructions which Felix bestowed upon the Arabian, the strange system of human society was explained to me. I heard of the division of property, of immense wealth and squalid poverty, of rank, descent, and noble blood. So now he's understanding wealth, he's understanding squalid poverty. So he might start understanding why the family is sad. Okay, they are living a poor life, and obviously with poverty comes turmoil, comes problems. You know, you never know when your next meal is gonna be. You're always, especially in this time, you probably don't have money for natural heat. That's why he always has to go cut the wood so you can bring it in, right? Um, every conversation, sorry, the words induced me to turn towards myself. I learned that the possessions most esteemed by your fellow creatures were high and unsullied descent, united with riches. A man might be respected with only one of these acquisitions, but without either he was considered, except in very rare instances, a vagabond and a slave, doomed to waste his powers for the profit of chosen few. So he does notice that wealth and power are important in mankind, and that you should at least have one of them. Okay? And what was I? Of my creation and creator, I was absolutely ignorant. But I knew that I possessed no money, no friends, no kind of property. I was, besides, endowed with a figure hideously deformed and loathsome. I was not even of the same nature as man. So this is where it's clicking. This is where it's like dawning on him. Okay, who am I? What am I? Because I'm not man. Okay, I don't know who my creator is. What am I? I was more agile than they and could subsist upon coarser diet. I bore the extremes of heat and cold with less injury to my frame. My stature far exceeded theirs. When I looked around, I saw and heard of none like me. Was I then a monster, a blot upon the earth from which all men fled, and whom all men disowned? Really questioning his identity, and not only questioning it, but he goes to the negative. Am I a monster? Am I a blot on this earth? Okay, a blot, like, what is that? That's like non-existence, right? Not worth the space. So notice how he takes it to the negative. Okay, I cannot describe to you the agony that these reflections inflicted upon me. I tried to dispel them, but sorrow only increased with knowledge. Notice that. But sorrow only increased with knowledge. Oh, that I had forever remained in my native wood, nor known nor felt beyond the sensations of hunger, thirst, and heat. You've ever heard of that saying, ignorance is bliss? I'm sure there are moments in the creature's life where he just wished he didn't know what he knew now. You know, sometimes it's better not to know, but he's learning that he is not normal, that he is not love, that he just has no creator. And sometimes that could be very humbling, that could be very scary. Of what strange nature is knowledge? It clings to the mind when it has once seized on it, like a lichen on the rock. I wished sometimes to shake off all thought and feeling, but I learned that there was but one means to overcome the sensation of pain, and that was death, a state which I feared yet did not understand. I admired virtue and good feelings, and loved the gentle manners and amiable qualities of my cottagers, but I was shut out from intercourse with them, except through means which I obtained by stealth, when I was unseen and unknown, and which rather increased than satisfied the desire I had of becoming one among my fellows. The gentle words of Agatha and the animated smiles of the charming Arabian were not for me. The mild exhortations of the old man and the lively conversation of the loved Felix were not for me. Miserable, unhappy wretch. Other lessons were impressed upon me even more deeply. I heard of the difference of sexes, of the birth and growth of children, how the father doted on the smiles of the infant and the lively sallies of the older child, how all the life and cares of mother were wrapped up in the precious charge, how the mind of youth expanded and gained knowledge of brother, sister, and all the various relationships which bind one human being to another in mutual bonds. So he's learning about family, about connection, about relationships, and it's really going to hit him that he has none. And I'm pretty sure that's really going to take a toll on him. But where were my friends and relations? No father had watched my infant days. No mother had blessed me with smiles and caresses. Or if they had, all my past life was now a blot, a blind vacancy in which I distinguished nothing. From my earliest remembrance, I had been as I then was in height and proportion. I had never yet seen a being resembling me, or who claimed any intercourse with me. What was I? The question again recurred, to be answered only with groans. I will soon explain to what these feelings tended, but allow me now to return to the cottagers, whose story excited in me such various feelings of indignation, delight, and wonder, but which all terminated in additional love and reverence for my protectors. For so I loved, an innocent, half painful self-deceit to call them. So he did love. Remember, I was benevolent, but misery made me a fiend. He was good. What changed? What triggered it? And we're going to continue reading that. As a matter of fact, we're going to find out in chapter 6 uh, what happens.